Alex Katz had a major effect on my life. He was my teacher in my junior year, and he did something. I had a class with him, and he actually took one of my paintings and he held it up in front of the class, and he actually brought it up to the front of the room, and he said, "This is a painting." And here I am in my junior year at Pratt, and not knowing what my life is going to be, but he gave me such a push and such a support that I never forgot it. And he sort of told me to be a painter, is what happened. So he had a big effect on my life.
Are there any other teachers you want to tell us about or experiences?
Let's see. So I started the first painter that really got me was Matisse, and I think it was more it was really all about the line, that I was really into his line. And then from there, I always loved him, and I loved that he was part of the Fauve movement, which that whole wild beast movement, which was all about brilliant color. That made me want to be a painter. Really, that really excited me. And another painter that really excited me was his name is Arshil Gorky. I don't know how many people know who he is. But when I was I guess it was my sophomore year, there was a major retrospective at the Museum of Modern Art. And I went, and I actually cried through the whole show. I had never experienced art like that. I had never, the emotional side of it just took me over. And I guess it was the line and the color that I mean, if you know his work, there's a lot of drawing. It's totally abstract, but it was sort of like the fact that I had that reaction made me feel like I want to do that. I want to make paintings that people have a big reaction to, that brings them in, that takes them around, that just gives them that you want to keep looking. It's like the paintings that grab me are the ones that grab me and pull me in and want me to stay in there. And that's kind of what I'm about, like wanting to do that and expressing that energy that I have. You want me to talk about other influences?
Sure, sounds great.
So those are and I love Joan Mitchell, I love Basquiat. I mean, there's like so many painters that I love. But the other thing that had a big effect on me and my work was in 2008, my spiritual guide here, Noah, my son, told me I had to meet this man named Muji. And he was a spiritual teacher, and meeting him and feeling what I got from him was that I'm okay, that I am okay, that whatever I do, that I'm good, I'm okay. And there was this like feeling of just accepting who I am, what I am. And that's had a big effect on my art, because it's just allowed me to express the energy that I have, and just go with it, and not I try to keep the judgments away, but it's a battle. It's a constant battle of keeping out the demons, the judgments, all the stuff all the resistance. Like, there's a lot of resistance in making art. I think most artists feel that, that you're constantly coming up against that resistance, and you just gotta keep going.
We're very glad you came.
I have a question for you, Mary.
Yes.
That sort of what you just said spurred me. We've talked about it many times, but it's that dynamic or twist or tension between your commercial art and your art painting.
Did you have to bring that up?
Yes, because
We're getting
you
there.
said 2008, and there was a time there that this sort of boom, something happened. It was important for you to get to where you are here.
Right, 2008, the shit hit the
Right,
fan.
exactly. Right? And so but you're still producing the commercial art.
Right.
So compared to then, where you felt that they were fighting each other really hard, how do you feel about that now? I mean, I'm seeing this, and I know you're still creating, you know.
And you haven't seen my work in a long
I
time.
haven't, no, I haven't. So I just wanna hear some about that tension. How did you resolve that? Because I think that's really what most artists have a problem with. Not everyone is so lucky, maybe unlucky, to have a professional career that also has to do with creating art. But anyone who works in the creative field know that you have to still put bread and butter on the table, so you have something else going on. So what is in for you? How have you resolved that?
So I think that's, you know me, and you know
Yeah.
that that's been an issue with me, and I think that gets into the demons and the judgments. I think I've always seen my commercial art and my fine art as like two separate entities. And I think I have finally accepted both now, that I can do the commercial art and it's doing very well. It's very successful and people love it. And I still don't, people call it art. I don't necessarily call it art, but people call it art. So I think I've come to peace about those two things. And it was interesting because when this show was happening, the commercial business has been exploding. So I came and I told you, I said my two worlds are colliding in a really positive way, but it was overwhelming that and they were both happening at the same time. So I think I feel I think I'm accepting both sides now.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. And I used to think I had to choose. And I also made judgments that one was not good and one was good. You know, fine art was better than commercial art, which was the whole atmosphere of Pratt. Pratt is a commercial school, but there was a fine art department. And so there was always this, the fine artists were like poo-pooing the commercial artists, and the commercial artists didn't even care about the fine artist. You know, it was always that problem. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm cool with this. I think I'm comfortable with this. And having this show has been like incredible because it's I can really feel good about what's happening here as well, you know, and that's new for me. You know, I feel like I've been working, and this show really says kind of like where I'm at now. You know, and I'm less afraid. Also, you know, I'm more comfortable with my mark making. You know, I'm more comfortable with risk taking, and I'm seeing how, like, I started. I knew you were going to ask me about my process, right? So I started thinking about that, like my process, and my process starts with a physical energy that has, before I even get into the studio, that there's this energy that starts to build. To the point where I have to get to the studio, you know, or I have to do something, but it's like it builds, and then when I finally get to do something, it's completely unconscious. Like I'm not really, I'm not thinking, which is another goal, is to not think, just do it. And I think the mark making though, because I like what I'm doing with it, so it's a nice tool that I can just jump in and do something, and go with it. Yeah.
We're gonna take a few steps back.
Okay.
If you're not super familiar with Mary, in addition to being a painter, she is also a graphic designer. So I'm gonna give you a little background on
right.
that.
That's right.
Kind of jumped way ahead. But cool, a nice teaser. So, after you went to Pratt, you
Okay.
were an art teacher,
I taught in the New York City school system.
all right, and then you opened a needlepoint
Oh,
store
God,
in Greenwich Village.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
Okay. Just hand out the magazine. It's easier.
Oh, sure. Everyone can take a copy of the magazine. We have many more copies. Do you want to talk about that or keep
Teaching?
going? Teaching, needlepoint.
Well, the needlepoint. Okay, so I got my degree. I got a a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a teaching certificate. You couldn't graduate from Pratt with a fine art degree. You had to have a New York State. You had to either go into art ed or graphics. I knew I'd started in graphics. I knew it wasn't for me. I didn't like how long it took to get to the final painting. So I went to teach. So I taught. I student taught, and I was doing that part-time, and I was working in the first abortion clinic that opened in New York City as a part-time job. And I met this woman who's a nurse, and she was really into needlepoint, but she didn't want birds and flowers. So she said, would I make her she knew I was an abstract painter, and she said, so I made her an abstract needlepoint. And then I made her more, and then we decided we were going to open a store, and we opened a store called Design Point on Christopher Street. And we did that for about a year. She lost interest, and I bought her out the $10,000 that she put up to start all this. And then I continued. So I was painting abstract paintings and selling them, but I was selling them to needlepoint. That was my way of selling my paintings, actually. Then after that, are we oh God, okay. So the whole store changed to it was a hot street. It was a hot time in the village, and the store I turned it into a gift shop, and I was designing. The whole concept was you could come into my store and you could buy a rubber duck, a plush duck, a duck T-shirt, and the graphics went. You could buy a tiny little for baby all the way up to extra large adult, and it would be just a simple clean animal walking across the shirt. That was Design Point. And I did that for 15 years.
Wow.
At the store. Yeah. And then I built from the store. I built an activewear company, and I had a huge apparel company with my graphics that we were selling to department stores.
And then you met Kenny.
And then I met Kenny.
Kenny is not only your husband but your business partner.
Right. So I had I didn't meet Kenny yet. I had a partner. I had my retail store. I joined some organization, a mentor organization. I met this man who was invested in actually 5 different businesses that were happening, of the women in this group. And that's when I built the activewear company. And that went on for about 15 years.
Yeah.
And then I met Kenny.
And then you met Kenny.
And that was, I decided I didn't want to be a manufacturer anymore. I had to be into fashion. I wasn't into fashion. I was just into the image that went on the t-shirt, not on what the garment was. And you couldn't go back into a department store to a buyer and say, bring new graphics. She could care. She wanted a crop top. She wanted all different styles, and I was not into that at all. So then the business closed, totally mismanaged. And I started going to Javits Center for gift shows. And I would look for companies that either had something like what I was doing, or I thought they needed me. So my first licensing deal was a party goods company, paper plates. And that was very funny because I showed this buyer an abstract crayon drawing, and she said, "You put happy birthday on there," and we got a deal. And that was my first big licensing deal. And then I got a balloon deal, and that was how I was making my living. And I went to Kenny. So everyone said, "Go meet Kenny Bookbinder. He's on the first aisle. He's got 17 booths. Go meet him. You need to meet him." So I went to his booth, and I thought the name Kenny Bookbinder. Who's
Your name now.
That's my name. So we met, and he told me that he repped all these companies, and he said, "After the show, come and I'll tell you about the companies that I rep," which is what happened. And
Do you remember the first project you did together?
We decided we were gonna do, that there was no really creative New York souvenirs. And he had companies that were selling souvenirs and t-shirts and all this. So, the first thing we did were mugs, right?
Hats.
Hats.
Remember hats?
Oh my God.
Baseball hats in China.
Baseball hats, yeah. So we struggled for a lot of years, made a lot of mistakes. We're having the best years that we ever had. We should be closing it down and go on vacation, but it's become crazy wonderful. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So throughout all of this,
Yes.
you painted.
Yes. Well, I have to say, yes and no.
Okay.
2008 was when I really started painting, because I felt the business was horrible for everyone, and I was very dissatisfied. I didn't want to be in business, and I felt like I hadn't painted, and I felt like I needed to do something for myself. So if the business fell apart, that I could come back to my center, and that's when I really started painting. But I feel like the painting, this work, it took that long to get here.
Okay.
I don't feel like a lot of that along the way, you know, when I look at my older paintings, I'm like, oh my God, you thought that was good, you know? And it's like, now I feel now that I'm in a place where I feel it's happening. I feel good about what's happening. Yeah.
All right. So, do you sort of feel like you had to do like that that kind of work to get to where, like, it was like a building block to where you are now, or it's two different bodies of work?
No, I feel like I had to do all that to get here. Yeah.
So is there anything that you do today that you wished you would have known to do back then, or you just enjoyed that the process took you to where you are
Oh,
today?
I just wish I was nicer to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was just kinder to myself. You know, I'm very judgmental and critical about my work.
Were you reluctant to show your work?
I didn't think I was ready way back then. I didn't even try. You know, I really, I didn't feel like I had really, like, it was cohesive. I didn't feel like it was like a body of work, which I feel this is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very different.
So is that what made you feel ready, when you started feeling like you had a style?
Well, when I met you,
Mm-hmm.
and I met Tina because I was in a show that the Katona Museum Art Association had here, and it was like, I don't know, was that one of your first? Or you
That
had
was,
already,
I mean, I'm coming up on 2 years, so it hasn't been very long.
so was that 2 years ago?
Um,
You'd been open for a
it
while.
was January, it was last January, like,
Okay. So when I met Tina, we were just chatting. We were just having this chat, and she said, you know, I'm moving downstairs. She was just upstairs. She said, I'm moving downstairs, and I just said, oh, maybe you give me a show. And then we just started talking, and then, but at the time, I was thinking of, I had a body of paper work. In fact, this painting on this wall and painting way over on that wall. And I had done those paintings during COVID. That was the first work I was able to, I couldn't go into my studio, you know.
that one is titled Home Confinement.
The what?
Home Confinement.
Right, home confinement, that's what it's called. So I just lost my train of thought. So when I met Tina, I was like, oh, I have this body of work, this paper. Just like, I have a show here. I know I have a show. I had enough work that I had a show. It was these pieces, and it was just, maybe these even came later. I don't even know. But I had those.
I saw those.
Yeah. And so I invited her to my studio, and I said, so here it is, you know, and I took it out, and it's like all on the floor, but then she sees there's paintings. You know, I wasn't even thinking about the paintings. And she said, well, what about the paintings? I was like, oh, okay. And I knew I had a year, right?
Right.
Like we were planning a year ahead. So it was kind of like we were,
At first, Mary was worried that wasn't enough time.
that what?
I remember you thinking like, I was like, it's going to be next April, and you were like, April. I'm like, a
No,
year
I thought
from
it was,
now.
no, that was March, and I thought you were talking about that
Oh, okay,
April. And I'm like, what? That can't happen.
2 months.
But then I did a lot of work in that year, like just knowing that there was it was great to have this deadline. It's like I was used to deadlines, you know, so it was great having this deadline, which got me doing a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we met like 4 or 5 times,
Yes.
and then each time, you know, I would show her something, and you know, and she's very, she knows what she likes. She's like, yes, no, yes, no, yes. No. And then then we ended up showing the paintings.
You sure did. And before everyone leaves, the first painting that I saw of Mary's that was in that Crotona Museum Artists Association, it's a mouthful, show here upstairs, it's called Community, and it's
Oh, right.
facing outward. So take
Oh,
a
yeah.
peek at that. So that was the painting that drew me to
Right.
Mary. So it was definitely the paintings that
It
you need to
was.
show more of.
Right.
But then, were these the last works you made before the show? Or was it the Jamaica paintings?
No, Jamaica painting,
Okay.
the 2 big paintings, yeah.
So,
These were within this last year, and this was really interesting because at Bethany, which is where I have a studio, we had an open studio day, and I had these 3 I thought they were drawings on my wall, and I didn't know if they were finished. I stuck them up there because they wanted to show work in process. So I said, okay, this is work in process. And then a bunch of people just kept saying, they're done.
I'm done.
They're done. Like there's no. And then when I went back to try and like they're just done. So these are recent. I feel these and there's a connection between this and that. Yeah. Yes.
So we've mentioned the KMAA and you just brought up Bethany. So I want to talk a little bit more about the artist communities that you rely on or that you're part of and what kind of impact that has on you as an artist and human.
Yeah.
Tell us.
So Bethany is an art community. It started about 7 years ago. And I was aware of it, and I knew they had studios there, but they're tiny little studios. And I thought, well, I have space at home. You know, I don't need that. I don't need to go work in a little space. I have a bigger space at home. And then during COVID, I was really in touch with being an artist and being truly isolated as an artist. And then COVID just was like, oh my God. It was really, I saw how just isolated I was. And that's when I decided to try and get a studio at Bethany, because I felt like I needed other people, other artists. And I did that, and that's been amazing. I've never, at art school, you're around a lot of artists, but you're also around fierce competition. I mean, and it's ugly. It's not fun. I mean, everybody's like tense and nobody's kind. Nobody's kind.
And it's not like that at Bethany.
No.
Good.
No. It's very supportive, and everybody that's there is there to do their thing because they need a place to do it, and yet that when you're working there and you're feeling other people around you that are also trying to do their work, it's very supportive. And then we critique each other, we talk to each other. We look at each other's work. We have comments. It's amazing. It's like an amazing thing. And I experienced that with KMAA too. A group of people that, like-minded people that are, and everybody that's part of these groups knows that that's your camaraderie, that the struggle, what it takes to get to that studio. It's not easy to get there. It's like, and I say it's my work, and sometimes it's my work that I have to get done, but I know it's also this tremendous resistance of just doing it, because doing it for me puts me in this incredible vulnerable place, I feel that energy I was talking about physically, and then when I get there, it's like I have to work really hard to stay with it and just keep working, and having support is amazing, just amazing. I didn't even know that existed. I always thought artists were just competitive and and here, what you do here is the same thing. I come here and everybody gets it, they get it, they know what it takes, it's great. It's a great thing.
And even if they're not artists, it's like almost like we're educating the community on like the artist life and just being surrounded by art, and it just normalizes it. So I want to talk a little bit about opportunities that you've had. I know about the show you recently were part of in New York City.
Right.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Your scribbles.
Oh yes. So it's a gallery in Chelsea, Carter Burden, and I'm on their mailing list. I don't know why I was on their mailing list, but I got this thing. It said they were having a call for a show, and the title of the show was Scribbles, and I was like doing all of this right here at the time, and it was like, oh my God, this is my show. I gotta try to get in the show, and I got in the show, which was great, and that was a great experience because that another place where I felt like I was in great company. Like the art was great. I felt good being there. It was wonderful. Yeah, it was really wonderful. Yeah.
So along the way, have there been any opportunities that you've said no to, and how did you come to that decision?
So I can't think specifically, but I know I've turned down some licensing deals, and what it really came down to was that, and that I figured out along the way, I can't be something I'm not. So I was being called upon to be something I'm not. Like, oh, you're an artist, you can do this, and it's like, no, it's not my thing, or, so I've been in that, it's took me a long time because I did a lot of things that turned out to be shit, it's like, oh my God, why did I get myself into this? So I kind of I've learned that, like, I know it's gotta be in my style, the way I do it, or I can't do it. So yes, I have turned things down.
Yes. Do you know what's next in terms of
What's next?
What are you working on?
So
Or is there a show
this is
you had in
interesting.
mind?
Where are you, Tricia? Next is more paper.
Awesome.
More paper. I love working on paper. The problem with paper is what do you do with it when you're done with it? When you're working on a canvas, you can put some frame on it or you don't have to, but paper is a challenge. So, but I love the surface, and I don't know, something for me, I get looser, and I don't know whether it's because it's not as precious. If whatever you spend on a canvas, it's more expensive than what you spend on a piece of paper. I don't know if that frees me in some way. I don't know what it is, but something happens. So I want to experiment with more paper and more materials on paper. That's where, and I'm not going to worry about how I'm going to frame it.
Don't worry about the
I'm not worried about it. I'm not going to worry about that.
Now you know a guy in Katona.
The what?
Now you know a guy in Katona.
Yeah, right. That was a big issue with these pieces because I kept saying, at one point I said to Tina, we can't show them. They're just too big, and you can't show them because then people won't know how are they going to frame them. We're going to have all these problems. We're not showing them.
I said no, we're showing.
She goes,
them.
wait a minute, no, we got to show them. We got to show them.
At the beginning, Mary had asked about not framing them and hanging them with magnets, and I wasn't really sure that was my vibe.
You didn't like it.
I didn't like it, and I said that to her. And so when she said that, I was like, we can do magnets, whatever it takes, we can do magnets. I'm like, I'll start researching magnets. We have to show the paper, Mary. So then they got framed. So
what? More paper and more
How about oil?
Oil on paper.
Well, just oil in general.
Well,
So
I
you
love
had been-
oil. So that was the thing. I was working on acrylic all these years, and then I met my friend Lori over there. She's right over there.
Thanks, Lori.
And Lori's like, she's totally into oil, totally. And I'm totally into acrylics. But I started to feel with acrylics, there was something about, I wasn't getting the kind of transparency and the kind of edges I wanted, and it was like tight. And I felt with oil, it was much looser. And I started working, like all of that whole group of paintings across the back were the first oil paintings. I had done them in college, but I've been using acrylics all these years. So I love that. I love it. I love what happens with oil. So I don't know, I know I'm gonna continue with oil. I don't know, or mixed media, I don't know. We'll see, I have no idea. It's total
All right.
mystery, what's gonna come.
So earlier in our conversation, you mentioned that you sort of get pulled to the studio. You like have this energy, and then you kind of get lost in your work. What if you don't have that feeling? Can it happen once you're already in the studio, or like that's just not a painting day, Mary?
I pretty much know it's not a painting day, I think.
All right.
And the times that
You
I've
can't force
tried to push,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. And then I think it doesn't work, but then, I'll go back, I'll work on something, and I've said this many times to my friends, "Oh, how was your day?" "Oh my God, it was such crap, total crap." And I'll leave, and then I go home, and I come back, and then I look and go, "Oh, it's not so bad, not so bad, there's some hope here." So, I don't know. And then there are the times when I haven't, I feel guilty. I'm not going to my studio. I'm not doing my thing. I'm not working, and that's always like that. Got to produce. That's always going on in my head. Which is not great. That's not good. That's not a good thing.
So,
That's a good question, though.
thanks. Have you noticed any trends that inspire you? We've talked about people, but are there experiences? Like an obvious one might be going to a museum, or maybe like seeing a musical performance, or like, is there something that you feel like you try to do because that pushes you more to paint, it inspires you, rather than just the artists who've inspired you? Are there other experiences?
So, I love reggae.
Okay.
Love reggae music, and that's something I'll do if I'm in the studio and I don't feel like it's happening. I'll listen. I'll put on my earbuds and listen to music, and that gets me very excited. Or David Byrne. I love David Byrne. So certain music that gets me jazzed. I like, and that gets me going. And that's what I'll do if nothing's happening, and I want to get something going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you'll be in the studio and you reach a point where you have to stop? And
Yes.
why does that happen?
Why does it happen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I'm working on something and I get it to a certain place, and I feel like there's more looking than actual doing.
Okay.
So a lot of times I just feel like I'll just get to a point where it's like people ask me, how do you know when it's done? Like it's a similar kind of question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you know when it's finished? And it's just, there's something, if I'm working on something and it gets to a certain point and I don't know what to do next, I mean, it's kind of like, somebody once asked me that, how do you know when it's done? And I said, there's no next. It's kind of like, and it's the same thing if I'm working on something and sometimes I'll leave it for weeks, and I'm better off when I'm working on 3 or 4 paintings at a time, so I just keep, so if I put one down because I've gone as far as I can for that moment, and then I'll start working on something else, and that's like a good way to handle that, because the not knowing.
Now that the show has come to a conclusion, are there any paintings in this show that you think you might revisit? Or are they?
Oh no,
They're done.
they're done.
I know most artists feel that way, but
They're done.
I know some artists who will go back and change.
No.
No. Not married.
No, and it's like, and they're really done. I mean, when I don't know what to do anymore, it's
They're
done.
done.
And I think it's working. That's tricky. I mean, I could not know what to do, and it looks terrible. So then it's like, forget it. You know.
That's funny. It makes me think, Trisha, the other day we were talking about how sometimes artists will put paintings in a timeout and just turn them around. Do you have like any quirky practices in your studio that you want to talk about? Like you just can't look at it anymore, but you know you're going to be back to it?
Well, first I work it in, I keep turning it around as I'm working on it.
Okay, so like
I'm doing that all the
changing
time.
the orientation.
Well, yeah, and I do change, like this started out as a landscape.
Okay, like horizontal.
Yeah, and it wasn't happening. So then one day I just turned it upside down because I was like frustrated. I was like, oh, wow, that's better. So.
Does anyone have any questions? Trisha?
I do have a question. So I think every artist has kind of an energetic signature.
Can you talk louder?
Yeah, I think artists have energetic signatures, like a go-to move or a go-to color. And when you sit and you see a show of your work all in one space, sometimes that continuity across the paintings and the artwork can come through. You mentioned seeing the paperwork's up over your left shoulder against the one behind Tina. I see circles. Do you have any? Sometimes we have no idea why they come out and what their like, connection is to us, why we're drawn to them without even thinking. Have you ever noticed it? Do you have an idea of what it may represent for you? I'm curious.
No. But I do know that my shapes are very organic, and I know that that's something that just I don't know where that comes from. Recently I've really started kind of observing myself, and I came to, and it's probably not even a surprise, but it surprised me that there's a whole part of this that's just spiritual, that has nothing that I feel like when I'm working, it's coming through me. I'm not in my brain. I'm not thinking. I'm thinking when I'm trying to figure things out, but the initial energy is purely spiritual. It's not. That's a big part of it. I think it's probably true for a lot of artists. Most artists. And I think if you're in your truth and your center, it just. There's really no words. It's very that energy that I talk about and that spiritual side of things. It's just that's going on all the time. And someone will ask me, how did you do that? I could not tell you how I did anything here. Really. I mean, it sounds weird, I guess, or crazy, but I don't know what this all is really.
That's awesome.
Right? I don't, yeah. Didn't expect that answer, right?
There was
I'm always interested to learn how artists cultivate their audience, and usually that leads to social media, but I know how Mary feels about social media, so we'll talk about something else.
Okay.
So how do you cultivate your audience? Do you feel like you want to be part of any local art fairs, or are there any institutions that you are on your list of want to submit to a show there eventually, or you were in the show in the city and that was just because you were on their email list, but like, do you have more intentional ways of getting your work out there and making sure it's seen?
That's just a miserable part of all of it.
All right, next question.
No, I mean that's that's such an artist struggle, I hate the social media side. but I think it's necessary, which is why I want you to do it.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, and that's been very cool this whole time. You've been doing all this great social media. It's been like amazing. All I have to do is like just yes, and then it comes on my page. You know?
I invite her to be a collaborator every morning so she can just say yes.
Right.
And it goes right to her feed.
It's great.
I'm glad
God, I like to, at one point I felt like around 2008, and, during that time I felt like, oh, I've never shown my work, I need to get out there. So I started I would hear about shows and I was just applying to all these shows and getting in, and that was great. And then I really, when I found KMAA, Katona Museum Art Association, I was really excited because I really felt like I was in great company. So that's important to me, that I'm going to show with other artists that I have respect for. I mean, I want to be in that place. But it's a big problem as far as, I love, this is like my dream come true. Like, this is amazing, that I'm sitting here talking about my process and my art, and my art's all around. I mean, it's extraordinary. So, like, I'd love more of that.
More of that.
More of that, when it's ready. I don't think I'd be ready for something for a couple of years at this point. I really, I'll show things here and there, but, in terms of a body of work and where it's, that could be wild. Like put all this aside and see what happens. Like, who knows? I don't know.
Kenny.
Yeah, I had a question.
Uh-oh.
So, you get up roughly at 6:30 or 7.
Oh, no.
You make the bed even if I'm in it. You go downstairs, you check your emails, your texts, kind of organize the day in your head. You come up, drag me out of bed, we go for a beautiful walk. We come back, have some breakfast, take a look at different canvases. I'm going to paint over this one, do this or that, get an idea.
I don't do that. I go look at the orders for the day that we have to ship, and I run around and put them together, and I pick and pack and ship. That's what I do.
Yeah, we have like a mom pop part of the business where Mary fills the Etsy and the Shopify orders. And so you do that.
Uh-huh.
And then you make yourself a little lunch.
Right.
And you head off to be with your homies over at Bethany. And you paint a little bit. And then
We have a lot of lunches.
yeah, and then you wander home about 4:30, check in with me, and I'll say, oh, we need to take the San Diego designs and put Miami Beach on them also.
Yeah.
And,
What's the question?
and the question. And then from roughly 6 to 7, we'll say, where are we going to eat tonight? And it's not that there's so many choices, it's there's so few that makes it difficult. There's a gap between like 4:45 and 5, and I'm just wondering, if you're planning to fill that in some way.
You know the answer to that.
Yes.
So Mary's very busy. Yes.
Yeah.
So we've talked about sort of the trajectory of your fine art career. The graphic, do you want to talk any more about the graphic design business? Are there goals you have for that for the upcoming year, or are you hoping to wind that
Well, what's happening-
down?
No, it's interesting. We should be winding it down, but we're not. In fact, we're revving it up big time. Initially we started, it was New York was our big market, and now we're selling the whole country, and actually we're still internationally as well. So I'm pretty excited because like all these years we've been kind of like working so hard and trying to have the kind of relationships with buyers that we have now. So it's like so the buyers are like, they like the style, so they'll call me and say, okay, I have this location, and these are the images I need, and I do them. And it's a wonderful position because we're not like chasing now. Like people are coming to us, and the brand is recognized. I mean, for years we've tried, all kinds of optimization and all this stuff, and nothing, never worked, and we always paid money to people that never happened, and so it's all happened organically now, because there's been enough time that it's been out and it's been seen. So I don't know what's going to happen. It's and I'm liking it. I'm enjoying that. I'm not enjoying it when there's too much work and I can't do anything else, but I'm liking what's happening. So we're just gonna, I don't know what's gonna happen. We're at the age where we should have been packing it in, but we're not. So who knows? I don't know what's gonna happen. As long as I can keep painting, and keep that going.
So Mary and Kenny, Mary, you have designs with the U.S. Navy, is that right? The UN, United Nations.
Yep.
Many of our airports.
Top of the Empire State Building.
Top of the Empire State Building. Who else?
Oh my God! Let Kenny tell you.
Yeah, just about every airport.
Every airport.
Lots and lots of individual stores, groups of stores.
Museum of the City of New York.
Yeah, a few museums.
Do you have
aquarium here and there?
a dream client you're hoping to work with, or
In that world, yeah, there's some big companies that we're trying to get into right now. Like we sell Hudson News, and we sell Parrot. We sell the airport chains, but there's some of them that we're trying to crack, and maybe the Army. We're in the Navy, so maybe we can get in the Army. We'll see. Yeah,
There's always the Air Force.
the Air Force.
Marines. So, is there anything you feel like we haven't touched upon that you'd like to talk about? Does anyone have any burning questions for Mary?
Yes. Andrea.
What are some of your younger influences? Before maybe family or any influences on your art before
Like, where did this come from?
Like as a
Yeah.
child?
as a child? Yeah.
So my mother was self-made interior designer artist. So I think it's in the genes. I mean, I think I was born. I think people say, well, how come you all this what about your color? And to me, I just say it's God-given. I just intuitive. But it was interesting in my house because my mother was an artist, and it was kind of expected, this stuff I did. It wasn't I didn't get praise for it. It was sort of it was taken for granted. I should be able to do what I'm doing. It wasn't. But then when I was in maybe it was third grade or something, I remember I did a cutout of a cowboy, this paper thing, and the teacher was like, oh my God. And I started getting from outside of I was getting praise from outside. I wasn't getting it from home. But I think I was born with certain skill. I mean, I think that, but it was and I was also raised that I had to make a living and take care of myself, and, wasn't going to find a rich husband. And, it was I had to be out there, and I had to take care of myself. So I always knew that. So, which is kind of why I think I didn't choose this path initially, because I was too afraid that I had to survive, and that's why I never went to graduate. I never got an MFA because I had to go to work. I never, So it was kind of wonderful when I was able to actually that I had the career and the income, and then I could do this. So. I mean, I feel very lucky about that. I mean, I worked like hell, but it worked out. It's worked out.
Where were you born?
I was born in Croton,
Oh,
actually Peekskill Hospital,
okay.
and I lived in Croton until I was 15. And then we moved to the city. My parents got divorced. My mother remarried, and then I went to Pratt. Because I lived in the city. I had to
So you lived
commute.
in Manhattan?
Lived in Manhattan.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was interesting, getting into Pratt. When I was in, I think it's in that, I don't know if it's in the article, when I was in high school, so I moved from Croton and then I went into 10th grade to George Washington High School in Washington Heights. And my guidance counselor, when it was time to go to college, told me, my grades were like B minus. I mean, they were C. My grades were not, I wasn't a good student. And they basically said, you're not college material, you shouldn't apply, you should apply to a 2-year college. And I was like, what? My family, everybody went to college, you know, they're telling me, you know. And so I applied to Pratt, and I got into Pratt, which was like amazing. And then it was a home test. You had to present an actual portfolio. I don't know, now it's probably all digital, or I don't know how it's done now. But so that was great. And that's when I started getting, you know, like, I always got encouraged. I won the art award in, you know, high school kind of thing. But it didn't come from my parents, for sure. For sure. I made it in spite of them.
I hear you. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you,
This has been
Tina.
wonderful. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Mary, I think we'll stay around for a little if you want to ask her any questions or chat with her. I'm here as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.